brief bio. Joseph Wagner has been a Buddhist practitioner since 1988 and is a resident teacher at Chuning Ling in Denver, Colorado. A student of many great masters, he's particularly fortunate to receive the Dzogchen transmissions from Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, Adu Rinpoche, Adzung Bailo Rinpoche, and Tertun Kashi Tashi Gyaltsen Rinpoche, and also to have had numerous opportunities to clarify their meaning in Tibet, Nepal, and India, as well as in the West, with some of the main lineage holders of our time. So we're very, very happy to have you here, Joseph. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you so much to everyone for organizing this, and Stephen for introducing me, and Michael for making this happen. It's my pleasure to talk about Tulku Urgyen. He's my root guru. And, it's my favorite topic. When I sent a message out to a few people to see if they wanted to join this, and I said I would talk about how I met Tulku Urgyen, what happened when I met him, and the aftermath. So the aftermath is still going on. I still am living in the aftermath of meeting that great master. So I thought, since this is a Dharma event, then we should engage in the Dharma as Tulku Urgyen used to do it. And how he did it was he framed all things within the three excellences. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. I have a feeling Chogyam Rinpoche does it this way. But I thought I would do that. So the three excellences are the correct preliminaries, the main part, and then the dedication of merit. And since we're going to talk about something that's very special, then it's really good to do that. So if you allow me to guide you in that way, I hope that's all right. When we think about the preliminaries, the first thing to do is to recognize our incredible good fortune. We're so lucky to have connected with the Dharma, and not only the Dharma, but the Vajrayana Dharma, and not only the Vajrayana, which is amazing in itself, but the Dzogchen teachings. Those are supposed to be the absolute pinnacle of the pyramid that is Buddhism. And so we should reflect for a moment on our extreme good fortune. Not only did we connect and so forth and have the enthusiasm and interest to be here tonight, but also we had the ability, right? We could be doing something we don't want to be doing. So it's very, very fortunate that we get to be here. So give rise to a sense of great joy that we can be together. I think that's one of the most important things whenever you're going to practice, because we tend to repeat things we like to do and that make us happy, and not repeat things that we don't. So if we don't frame our practice within a sense of wonder and joy and gratitude, then we have the chance that we won't repeat it as often as we should. If we want to get enlightened, we've got to practice. So when we've done that, then the next thing is to take refuge. So think to yourself, I take refuge in the Buddha as the guide. I take refuge in the Dharma as the path that we follow, the instructions. And I take refuge in the Sangha, not only the Sangha of your own community, but all the communities that you're connected with, and especially the Arya Sangha, the noble Sangha of masters who have accomplished the path. So think like that for a second. When we take refuge, especially in this path, and we also want to think about taking refuge in the Guru. It's the Guru whose instructions we actually receive. We might read books and we might watch videos, but it's the teacher that imparts the oral instructions. So when I think about the Guru, I always think Tulku Urgyen, because he was so awesome. And he was also the first, I met Chogyam Rinpoche before I met Tulku Urgyen, but Tulku Urgyen really punched a hole in me that still hasn't healed. So I'm very grateful to him. So whoever you consider your teacher, we should also always supplicate them and take refuge in them. And since we're here to listen to stories about great masters and funny experiences that we've had and how the path has influenced our lives, then it's important to give rise to bodhicitta. The whole path is about bodhicitta. We're only on this path so that we can remove our own suffering and difficulties in order that we can benefit others. So in your own hearts, in your own way, just think, I give rise to the thought of enlightenment for the benefit of everyone. And finally, maybe this is something you already do, but if not, it's a nice thing to do. Tulku Urgyen personally told me that you should, whenever you sit down to practice, you should always make up your mind that you're going to make progress during that session. Now, since this is not really a meditation session or a teaching, it's just a sharing, but let's imagine that we're going to make progress, just like the Buddha did. That aligns us with the Buddha. That's what Tulku Urgyen always said, because when the Buddha sat down under the tree to attain enlightenment in India, which he finally did, he said, I'm not going to get up until I do this, until I see my absolute nature, until I clear up these issues that I've been wandering around in northern India for a long time trying to deal with. So when we sit down to practice, we should always think, I'm going to make progress during this very session. So even though this is not an official meditation session, let's pretend like it is and make up your minds that when you get up from your seat after this talk, you're going to be more enthusiastic, more motivated, and have more faith than you did when you sat down. Think like that. These preliminaries are essential, and Tulku Urgyen emphasized them always. He framed everything that he said, it seemed, within the three excellences. So that's the first excellence. When Tulku Urgyen taught, you know, the main part of the practice is to be free from concepts. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to do that very well, since I've got to remember stories and tell you guys. But you guys can abide within your own natures during this talk, and I invite you to do so. That makes everything meaningful. That's what the whole point of the Dharma is, and it's the whole point of everything we do once we enter the Dharma. So think you're going to engage in your practice while you hear my voice and reflect on what's happening. I was thinking about this. I mean, I think it was about a week ago or something that I was invited to do this. So of course it's been on my mind all the time. I give talks, and we have a little center here, and we've moved to Zoom since the COVID thing hit. And I give talks every week, but I found myself quite nervous today. I'm just really thinking like, wow, I've got to talk about my root guru. I want to make clear something very, that's probably essential. I was not a close student of Tulku Urgyen. I was just a fortunate person who was able to meet him a number of times, to receive an empowerment and to get some teachings. And although I'm a disciple officially, I guess, I'm not close like Michael Tweed was, or Graham, Eric. I mean, these people, they spent hundreds and hundreds of hours, Eric, probably thousands of hours with the master. And, you know, to some degree, the more time you spend, the more the vibe infects you, so to speak. So you should really, I want to encourage you guys to invite Andreas Kretschmar to give a talk. I'm not positive he'll do it, but he was the other one who is so close to Tulku Urgyen. And he's got a different style than Eric, and a very loving heart. And he's just a great guy. So I want to encourage you to ask him, since other than Eric, he's the one that I think is closest. Maybe Marcia would do it if you could get a hold of her. I mean, these guys are much tighter with Rinpoche than I was. I'm going to tell the story of meeting him, because it was such I've told this to a few people, and people say like, wow, that's not one we've heard before. So I thought I would share it, and you can see what it was like back then. I don't know how many of you have been to Asia or been to Nepal in specific, but when I first heard about Tulku Urgyen, I was living actually in Taiwan. I was teaching English. I had graduated from college. I didn't know what to do. My girlfriend and I, we moved to Taiwan to teach English. We've been there a year and a half or something. And during that time, I received what I now think of as one of the most important phone calls I've ever received in my life. And it was from a guy I had graduated from college with, who, when he finished, he came to Taiwan to study Chinese. And he said he had been looking at the message board that was at the school, the university where he was studying. And there was a Zen group run by this guy named Steve Powell, and it had a phone number. This is back in the days. No cell phones, no internet, none of this stuff. So Thomas, the guy who saw the note, he called me on the phone at my apartment in Taiwan. He said, hey, I know you're into Zen. I had been practicing Zen for about 5 years at that time, and having been introduced to that in college. And I was pretty excited to get that call. He said, hey, this guy, he's English, and he runs this group, and here's his number. I just thought of you when I saw it. And I when I got invited to give this talk, I actually wrote Thomas a message just saying, thank you so much for calling me. if he hadn't called me, who knows what would have happened. I definitely wouldn't have had this opportunity to talk to you, and my life would have been probably very different. It's hard to meet with these great masters, as you know. So I feel so grateful to him. But that phone call, it ripened into my whole life now. It's uncanny. So anyway, they met on Sunday, this little group with this guy, Steve Powell, who, if any of you have ever been to Bhutan in, last 10 years or something, Steve Powell's a famous guy in Bhutan. He lives in Bhutan. He was invited there by Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche, and he works with street kids and drug addicts, and his name is Shenpen Zangpo, is his Tibetan name. And so if you're ever in Bhutan, you got to hunt him down. He's easy to find. He lives in Thimphu. Anyway, the following Sunday when the group met, I drove my little motorcycle over the mountain. Taiwan's beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's a gorgeous place. At that time, the scene in Taiwan, the Buddhist scene, was dominated by Zen. When Chiang Kai-shek led the mainland, when Mao took over, he brought with him all kinds of artists and a lot of amazing people, including several real Zen masters. And I had connected with one named Shengyan Fasher, and was studying with him to the degree that I was able to. And Taiwan was there's a lot of dedicated people there. I went to a 7-day retreat, and not only did you have to have an interview, can you imagine? I mean, try to imagine you put together a retreat here, and you have so many people interested that you have to interview them for the best students. Hilarious. Anyway, I had an interview, which I had to do in Chinese. My Chinese was bad, and it was terrible now. But I got through it, and then when I showed up for the retreat, there were 250 people there, and Joe was the only white person. And I was all alone in a certain sense. So very interesting. But the Dharma was very strong. It still is strong in Taiwan. The Tibetans had not made the headway there that they have in the years since. This was in 1992. So I was studying with a Zen master. I had another teacher in the States. I was practicing my Zazen every day, and I was super into it. I had no interest in Vajrayana. But I drove across the mountains. I met Steve Powell, and I sat with his group for the rest of my time in Taiwan, many, many months. And I got quite close to Steve. He became a kind of teacher of mine. He had been a Zen monk in Japan for, 10 years or something. And he had come to Taiwan to study, to get closer to the root of the Zen tradition. So he was a great resource to me and very kind. And we became quite close. And about, whenever I finished in Taiwan, I was leaving, and my main goal, I was going to do some traveling with my girlfriend, but my main goal was to go to Kathmandu. I had wanted to go to Kathmandu since I was a little kid. I don't know why that was. Just the name stuck in my mind. So we were going to go to India and visit the Vajrasana in Bodh Gaya and do a few things, just Buddhist stuff, and see what India was like. And then we're going to go to Taiwan or to Kathmandu. And I had been discussing this with Steve, and he said, if you're going to go to Kathmandu, there's just one person you got to meet. You got to meet Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. I was like, ugh, I'm happy to meet him, but I got a teacher, Zen. He's like, let me tell you something. When you meet a Zen master and you really get this feeling like they might know something, they might really be onto something. I said, yeah, I know that feeling because I had met a few teachers. He said, when you meet a Tibetan master like Tulku Urgyen, they know. You don't have any doubt in your mind. You got to meet this guy. So at that point, I was like, all right, Steve says it's important. I'm going to do it. He gave me the name of a student of Rinpoche, whose name is Sridhar Rana, who has since become like the main person in the rebirth of Nepali Buddhism. He's got hundreds and hundreds of students. He just completed, I think, 21 years of retreat. He went into retreat just 2 days or something after Tulku Urgyen's cremation, and he just finished a few years ago. Anyway, at that time, he was the head of the Shangri-La Hotel. So I called him up. I had his phone number. I phoned him up. Again, no cell phones or anything. I just phoned him at his house, and I explained who I was. Like, Steve Powell! I haven't seen him in years. So we met, Sridhar and I, at this cafe, and we had a Coke, and we were just chatting, and I had some questions that I had sort of developed through my practice, and Steve wasn't able to answer them. I couldn't really find anyone in Taiwan that could really answer these questions, and so I thought I'd bring them along. I wish I had still had access to those. I can't remember what they were, but to me they were very profound and very complex. And I laid these out before Sridhar, and he answered those questions like they were like, "What is your name?" You know, like it was so easy for him. And I was really moved. I was like, "Wow, this guy knows everything." And he said, "You've come to Kathmandu at the right time, because in a few weeks, Chokanima Rinpoche, who is the son of Tulku Urgyen, is going to run this seminar that he has." And after that seminar, which I was thinking about it, and as I remembered, I think it was 5 days and then a weekend and then 5 more days. And then you went to Nagi Gompa to see Tulku Urgyen, and he gave the pointing out instructions. So I said, well, I'm going to sign up for this. I'm into this. Okay, I'll give it a try. I was impressed by Sridhar and into it. So my girlfriend and I, we went to the mountains. We did a little trekking. I got super, super sick and almost died. And it was typical Asia stuff. And I come back, and there's a few days before the seminar, and I got to sign up for it. And if any of you have been to Nepal and before the earthquake, the Gompa is sort of set back inside this big courtyard. This is Kaning Shedrapling, Chokanima Rinpoche's place. So I walk through the gate, and I walk up, just not sure where I'm going. Just I knew you had to go there to sign up for this thing. So, okay, cool. I'm walking up, and I see there's something posted on the main door of the Gompa. So as I'm walking up there, and as I get close, I realize that inside they're doing some sort of ritual, puja, which I had no familiarity with at all. But they were playing those huge horns and beating those drums, and all the hair on my body stood up. I was like, wow, this is for real. They're not joking around, these guys. This is serious. So I was kind of like my heart beating, like, wow, what am I getting into? That kind of feeling. So I went up to the old library and signed up for the seminar, which I think was like $35, something like that, very Nepali prices, and got the information that we needed. And a few days later, it started. And from the very first, I was so moved by Chokanima Rinpoche. I didn't realize anyone had this kind of knowledge. He was just, he is. You guys probably are all students of him, and he's amazing. I just saw him last year for the first time in many years. I was in Nepal and saw him, and he was even more excellent than he was then. He was amazing. And those days, Eric Pemmican Sung was translating, so that's like a pure conduit. And it was just really blew my mind. I really felt like something's going on here that is not available in the Zen tradition, at least not in Taiwan or what I had experienced in America. I had moved to San Francisco after I graduated from college for a while and sat with the San Francisco Zen Center, and just nobody was like that. As you know, Chokanima Rinpoche is a great scholar in addition to being an amazing being on every level. So he really, must have been sort of slipping into Vajrayana mindset, but I didn't realize that I remember taking the teachings and sitting I still sit in the full lotus, and I'm just sitting in the full lotus. And when you take teachings in a Zen context, you do it like you're sitting. So I was like meditating through it, which several people later commented. They said, I was like, what were you doing? Because everybody else was kind of like chilling and enjoying, but I was still kind of in the Zen mode. So anyway, the teachings went on for a few days, and I was really moved. To back up slightly, before I started this, I wanted to buy a statue of the Buddha, and there's a lot of amazing statue makers in Kathmandu. And at that time, the most famous guy, who was still alive then, it was called Siddhi Raj. He's a very famous statue maker. Now his kids and his cousins are all making statues, but at that time, he was really famous. And I didn't know this at the time, but just for old Kathmandu hands, I went down to Durbar Marg. There were some kind of antique-y, high-end shops down there. And I went in this one store. They had all this old stuff. You used to be able to buy termas, actual termas there that Tibetans had sold in the early days. And they had all this old stuff and cool things. And I said, hey, I really want to buy a statue of Shakyamuni Buddha. If you got anything. He's like, we have one thing. And he goes in the back, and he comes back out, and he's got this statue. I got it out so I could show you guys. He's got this statue, which is a spectacular statue, I think. And he said, we have this one, and it's made by Siddhi Raj. And I was like, I had no idea what that was. I only found out later that he was so famous and stuff. So I spent all the money I had. I bought the statue. For me, now looking back, it seemed it was cheap, but at the time, it was everything I had. So I felt funny about doing it, and I showed it to Sridhar, and he said, wow, it's a nice statue. You really should get it blessed. And he explained to me that in the Vajrayana tradition, a realized master can put the actual mind of the Buddha in the statue so it becomes a true object of refuge. And I was like, man, I was like saucers, you know. I'm like, wow, that was cool. I gotta do this. So I thought, I'll take you to Chokin Rinpoche, you know. And I said, should I take you to Chokin? He said, you know, I think you should go and see Tulku Urgyen. So that was interesting. So we were probably, I don't remember if we were in the first or the second half of this of the seminar. But after it ended like at noon every day. I ran out, I got in a taxi, and Rinpoche at that time was staying at Parping and not at Nagi. And most of the people here in my own later experiences were mostly at Nagi Gomba. But at that time, he was staying at Parping. And Parping is famous because Guru Rinpoche practiced there. There's two caves there where Guru Rinpoche did retreat, and a lot of other masters with the handprints and all sorts of cool stuff. And I hadn't been out there. And at that time, now, if you go to Kathmandu to go to Parping, first of all, it takes 2 hours because there's so much traffic. And secondly, it's a huge city full of all these monasteries. It's just an extension of Kathmandu. Notice that if the taxi driver didn't even want to take me. And I was told beforehand, you got to make sure that you make them wait. So don't pay them all the money. Just give them whatever they have to have, and then tell them you'll pay them when you come back, and that you're going to need, you know, an hour or something. So I negotiate with some taxi driver. We get in the taxi. 40 minutes later or something, he stops at a complete dirt crossroad. There's nothing, right? And he said, "This is Parping." I'm like, uh-oh. I have no information except one name, and that's Andreas. All I know, Sridhar said, just go to the monastery where Tulku Urgyen's staying, which of course I thought would be right there by the road. It wasn't. And ask for Andreas. He'll help you. I was like, okay. So I get out of the taxi and kind of standing there. I see somebody by the side of the road. I just went up to him and I said the only thing I knew. Tulku Urgyen. That's all I knew. So they're like, Tulku Urgyen. And they like point like this up some path. So I started walking. I've got my backpack. I got my statue in the backpack. I said, hiking up there. My heart is really beating at this point. I mean, I felt like I was really on an adventure. And it turned out I really was. I didn't even realize that I was approaching a true crossroads in my own life. And so I walked up there, and after a few minutes, I saw there was a nun coming down toward me. And I just stopped her and I said, Tulku Urgyen. She said, oh, Tulku Urgyen. She was like, sorry, I'll get it together. I've been practicing. Anyway, I was like, that's cool. She was so Tibetan. So anyway, she took my hand, or actually my wrist like this, and she turned around and she led me up this path into this little courtyard, which has changed quite a bit now. But I was just standing in this courtyard, and she's gesturing to this doorway. And so I kind of went over the doorway, there's a little curtain, and I pushed to the side. And right then I saw this dude, this Westerner. And I was like, are you Andreas? And he said, yeah. Hey, Sridhar Rana sent me. I want to get my statue. Do you think that's possible? And he said, let's find out. And he kind of leaned over and pulled another like door hanging back, and he said something Tibetan, and he said, come on in. So I went in, and Rinpoche was sitting on his bed, just a small man, and dressed completely ordinarily, not in any kind of heavy robes or any kind of weird stuff, and just sitting there. And he had his yellow plastic mala that Eric told the story of, and he was just saying mantras and staring at me. And I went in, and instantly, I tell you, I can feel it like it was yesterday. It's 30 years ago almost. And I saw him, and the only thought I could give rise to was, I didn't realize there were people like this still alive. I thought this was from the past. And I was like, I think I made some prostrations. I don't have a real clear memory of what happened, but I was like, my mind was not operating very well. So I got out my kata. I remember I had a kata, and I offered it to him, and I explained to Andreas what I wanted to do. And Rinpoche was like, okay. And I gave him the statue. Okay. Now this is one important thing. In the bottom of these statues, there's like a piece of metal, right? And you're supposed to have the person, when you buy it, take that off. And then when they fill it with mantras and stuff, they put it back on there, but I didn't know that. So on the way, I was like, he's supposed to put something in the statue. How's he going to do that? I had this pocket knife that I've been lugging around forever. And I kind of made a little hole in the bottom, only like this big, just in case. I don't know why I did that. I was in the taxi. So I handed over the statue to Tulku Urgyen, and he said what still remains perhaps the most profound thing I've ever heard in my life. I was already kind of on pins and needles a little bit. And he picked up the statue, and he kind of frowned, and he looked at the bottom, and he was like, my monks aren't blacksmiths. As if, you would need to be a blacksmith to take the bottom off. My monks aren't blacksmiths. Andreas said, Rinpoche says his monks aren't blacksmiths. And I swear, of all the teachings I got from Tulku Urgyen, that was the most powerful. It was like everything went away. I think I must have stand with my mouth open because Rinpoche kind of laughed. And I was like, I thought that was the most profound thing I'd ever heard in my life. I was completely like, just nothing, the real mind-to-mind transmission. It was crazy. I just had never experienced anything like that. So I'm just kind of stunned. Rinpoche's like, don't worry. So he got some dutsi out or something. He put it in there and he blew on it and he did some stuff. He said, it's blessed now. It's fine. It's good or something. He handed it back to me and I'm in a daze, right? I was like, thank you. And Andreas was like, it's okay. This happens. So he led me out and I went out and I kind of went down some stairs and there was a little bench there. And I just sat on the bench, just try to get it together, just sort of like, I could not give rise to thoughts. And I was just like, that state. So I was really pretty moved. And I'm sitting there for a couple minutes and this monk comes along. And the monk could speak a little English and he said, where are you from? And I was like, America. And he said, oh, America. And he kind of pointed back up the stairs where I'd come down, kind of toward where Tulku Urgyen was. And he said, big city. And at first I was like, big city? What did you mean? Chicago? That's what I thought. And then it dawned on me, he wasn't saying city, he was saying city. He could see in my face that I had been blasted away by Rinpoche. So I was like, oh my God, they know about this. Like, this is incredible. Everyone knows that this is possible. And what is happening here? How did I not know about it? This kind of thing. So anyway, I got myself back to Kathmandu, still in a daze. And that lasted about at least 24 hours. I was really, later when I read the stories of, Naropa and Talopa and those guys, I thought, wow, I know what that's like. And I think that was the main thing. That was the biggest thing he ever taught me, showed me. He showed me what was possible, and in a way that didn't require any words except my monks aren't blacksmiths, which I can hardly say without getting all teary, because I felt like my life turned in another direction then. I felt like I was beyond any kind of hope at that point. I remember before going out there, I had been talking to Sridhar Rana about the path, the Vajrayana path, and he said, well, it's kind of intense in the beginning because you got to do this thing in Mundro, and you got to make 100,000 prostrations. I was like, I just, in my head at that time, I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. No possible way. I was in that taxi and I was like, I gotta start those prostrations right away. That kind of feeling, it's like, it was such a change. I can hardly believe such a thing happened to just ordinary Joe from Ohio. Anyway, the rest of the seminar went by and I was talking to Sridhar regularly about what I should do. And we went back up after the seminar was done with Tulku Rinpoche, and Tulku Urgyen officially gave the pointing out, which I had already seen what he wanted to show me, which was pretty cool. And it was a very wonderful experience. It was just amazing. So Sridhar said, the one key thing in this Vajrayana relationship is that you really have to be accepted by the master as a student. So you should go up to Parping. he was still a puppet, and ask him if he'll accept you as his disciple. So I was like, all right. And my girlfriend, Cindy, she also wanted to do that. So we went out there one afternoon, and we were kind of hanging around. There were other Westerners. And one of the Westerners who I can't remember who it was, but had been involved with Tulku Urgyen for a long time. She's like, there's no way he'll do it. I explained what I was there to do. And she was like, nope, he's not going to do it. He's not going to allow it. He never says yes. I was like, oh my God, I came all the way out here. He's going to say no. What am I going to do? You know, it's just this typical newbie stuff. So anyway, our turn came, and some girl from Santa Cruz, who I have a deep Dharma connection with, but have never seen again. She came in with us. It was just the three of us, and Andreas was there. I explained what we wanted. I said, Rinpoche, you know, I feel like you've just given me everything. I want to be your disciple. Please accept me as your disciple. I was kind of speaking for them. And he looked at me and he said, you can be my disciple if you practice hard. I think that was probably the best piece of advice he could have given me. And he gave us a transmission for the short Vajrakunsal Mindro. And I spent a few more weeks in Nepal and did the rest of my trip, came back to America, and I did that Mindro twice. I was like so into it. I felt like my life was on my own. There's something transmitted to me that it's still going now. And that I am so grateful to Tulku Urgyen for. It just, if it hadn't been that way, I don't know what would have happened to me. Mm-hmm. I was obviously into Buddhism, but that was an amazing, amazing experience. And I'm grateful I get a chance to share it with you guys. So thanks for listening. Anyway, I came back, I did the Mindro twice, and then I went back to Nepal. And again, these are the days when you couldn't make appointments or do anything. That was 95. This was right before Rinpoche passed away. He passed away in early 96. And I went back there. And I remember the only phone number I had was Greg Raybould, one of Tulku Urgyen's doctors and a close disciple, who would also be a great person to talk. He's very good at talking about Tulku Urgyen, so you guys should invite him if you want to have a lot of these talks. And I went to Nagigamba, and Andreas was there again. I also knew Eric by that point, but I connected with Andreas up there and went to see Tulku Urgyen and requested the Kunsang Tuktig empowerment, which he was like, I don't think he was feeling well. It was already, it must have been September, October. He was not in super good health. And I don't think he wanted to do it. In fact, I heard later from Andreas that he told Andreas privately, I don't want to give that empowerment. I don't feel like giving an empowerment. But then he said something that shows his amazing bodhicitta. I had, the only thing I had to offer, right? I said there are three kinds of offerings to your guru, right? Material offerings, caring for the Lama, and practice. And I didn't have any money. So I couldn't make any real offerings, and I wasn't close, so I couldn't serve him. Those positions were all taken. So all I could do was practice. And but I had done the Mindro twice, and it was clear that not impressed not the word, but he recognized that I had done that. And he told Andreas later, he said, I don't feel like giving an empowerment. I don't feel like doing it, but how can you refuse someone like that? Which I really, just ordinary Joe, Tulku Urgyen. So anyway, I received that empowerment, just me and like two or three of us. There was nobody there. It was magic times, right? The magic times of old Kathmandu. He was very accessible. And then I went back. I did that Mindro a couple of times, and Rinpoche passed away. I went to the cremation, and then by then my links started to form with other lamas, and I've been really lucky to spend quite a bit of time in Tibet, in Kham, right in the area where Tulku Urgyen was from, in Nangchen, and to be not a close student, but a student of Adi Rinpoche, who was close to Tulku Urgyen and is mentioned in, I think there's even a picture of him in Blazing Splinter. And to just, I don't know, Vajrayana took over my life. So that's the background. That's Joe. That's me. And then I was forced, maybe about 20 years ago, if you can believe that, around 2000 or something, I was forced by another teacher of mine to start this little group in Denver. And so we meet every week, and I just go about my life. But it was all because of that. My monks aren't blacksmiths. That's the whole thing, which if we take it back another step, it was all because of Sridhar Rana and his getting me to go up there. If I had just seen him in a group, it might have been different, right? And if we go back further, it was because of Thomas Chapman, the guy who called me with the phone number of Steve and stuff. So it's very interesting how these things unfold in our lives. And I want to encourage you guys, who I don't know at all, to pay close attention. The path, the masters, the Buddha, the lineage holders, they want you to get enlightened. That's all they want. And so they're constantly sending out their little tendrils of excellence. And you just have to be able to recognize those and then pull the thread when you get a chance. So that's probably the most important thing I can say. It's really necessary to follow up, to be courageous, and to give it a try. Because if ordinary Joe can have these kind of experiences, then everyone can. It's not me. I'm just a regular person. But it was all through the blessing of that guy. He was hot stuff. He was a member of the old guard, the last of the true. These days, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche was also born in Tibet, and he's amazing, and there's still great lamas in Tibet. But that fully processed, completely done kind of being, those guys are so rare. So rare. They're probably always been rare, but when I was first in Nepal, there were so many lamas around. You could just wander around. Chogi Trichen was there. All these great masters were around, and since then, most of them have passed away. So we have to make use of the time we have and the connections that we're able to establish, and really try to make the most of it. Is this going all right? Somebody give me a thumbs up so I can see.
You're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. Just
Okay.
keep going.
Okay. Just want to make sure everyone's getting it. So that's part one. That's just the me getting to know him and spending time. When I went back to Nepal, I received some teachings, and he was continuously giving the pointing out instruction to anyone who showed up. In fact, there's a funny story. Nagi Yomba is on a trekking route. I don't know if it's used as much now, but in those days, it was fairly common. You could hike up. In fact, I did it. You could hike up from Boda, where the stupa is, and where Choknimas Gomba is, and you could hike all the way up to Nagi Yompa, and then you could do a trek from there all the way to Yoma. And people still do that, I think, but Kathmandu's grown a lot. In those days, people would go through there, and I remember hearing a story that a little group of trekkers came through, and somehow one of the translators, I don't know if it was Eric or Andreas or somebody else, they sort of like realized there was some lama there, and they were like, can we see the lama? And they're like, sure. And these are just regular trekkers, don't know who he is, don't know anything, came in, gave a kata. He said, go ahead, sit down. He said, let's talk about the mind. He was like immediately talking about the most profound things that can possibly be discussed. And he started to give a little teaching and aim their minds toward the absolute nature, which is what his specialty was. And one of the people raised their hand and said, what is karma? And he kind of was like, who are these people? And he had to kind of like readjust his plan, I think so. But he was so open, and he was just so kind. I really feel that, he touched his forehead with everyone. I heard someone that Michael talked about that. No, it was Graham, I think, said that. He did that with everyone. There was a cowherd guy who was mute, and he might have also been deaf, but he was like a very small man and kind of like, handicapped in some way. And I watched him come in the room with Tulku Urgyen and take his topi off. He's a Nepali guy, and Tulku Urgyen touched his forehead to this guy, same as anyone. And to me, that's a big teaching. We're all the same. We're all the same. And we all, being the same, we contain the Buddha nature. And that Buddha nature, it wants to be recognized. It wants to be expanded. It wants to be trained in. It's my great pleasure to tell you what Tulku Urgyen told me. And that is, everyone is qualified to recognize who they are. No one is not qualified. No one has like a black mark on their score sheet, and so they're not allowed to be there for the teaching, or they're not allowed to recognize the mind nature. Everyone is available. Everyone is qualified. That was one of the main things. I wrote 3 things down that I wanted to tell you, and one of them was that he gave the teaching very openly, and he clarified your questions as much as you were able to clarify your doubts. And that is so rare. That is so rare. He just, as it says in Blazing Splendor, he's talking about one of his other teachers. And he says that he wouldn't give up until the person recognized. I felt that way with Tulku Urgyen. He just wouldn't give up. There are 10 people in the room. He's trying to give it to everyone. There are 2 people in the room. He's giving it to both of them. There's 100 people in the room. He's giving it to everyone. Like a miracle. That's in fact how Steve Powell, the guy who turned me on to Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, met him. He went to some sort of auditorium in Taiwan, and Rinpoche gave the pointing out to like 500 people or something. So I mean, that kind of kindness is pretty rare. Pretty rare. But that's the first thing is everyone's qualified. You guys are all qualified. Probably all of you are already siddhas, but those of you who aren't siddhas, just all you have to do is just relax because it'll happen naturally. It might even happen to me one of these days. You never know. Something else I wanted to say that's almost cooler than the fact that he was willing to teach anyone is that he made it so easy. He made it so easy. His presence was the whole teaching. He didn't. I mean, the instructions that he gave, of course, for most of us and myself, they were very necessary, but it was the field around him that was the most special thing. And I wanted to encourage you because it's so necessary and good to make aspirations that we all make an aspiration right now. Don't be cheap with your aspirations. You got to aspire all the way. So I think we should all take a moment and aspire. May we become exactly like Tulku Urgyen, where everything we do, everything we say, every place we go is pervaded by the absolute nature. That's the only point of Dharma, right? You want to become exactly like Tulku Urgyen. And when we sit down in the morning to do our practice, or whenever you do it, then you should aspire. May through this practice, I become exactly like the lineage masters of old. It's only through devotion that the blessings are transmitted. That's very clear. In fact, I got a quote here, which is from Khenpo Nachong. If you haven't seen Khenpo Nachong's autobiography, it's an amazing book. It's called Wondrous Dance of Illusion. And in there, if you don't know him, Khenpo Nachong was a student of Nosho Lungtok, who was a direct disciple of Patrul Rinpoche. So this is like a side lineage. Patrul Rinpoche and Chogyam Lingpa exchange teachings. And as you know, Chogyam Lingpa was Tulku Urgyen's great-grandfather. Anyway, Nosho Lungtok, main disciple of Patrul Rinpoche, probably the primary disciple, he told his student Khenpo Nachong the following, this is a quote: "You must understand that the pinnacle of realization, according to the wisdom intention of the Nintek, the heart essence, the actual ultimate meaning comes about solely through the transference of blessings of the lineage. In this lineage, realization is gained solely through faith and devotion to the Lama." The last sentence again, just so you can bury it in your hearts. In this lineage, realization is gained solely through faith and devotion to the Lama. This is the whole teaching of the Dzogchen lineage. This is the whole teaching of Vajrayana in general, and it's the special feature of Tulku Urgyen. If you have the good fortune to be in a group like this, to be connected with Chogyam Rinpoche and the other people who are guiding this, to have a copy of Blazing Splendor in your house, try to develop as much devotion as you can. The more devotion, the more open your heart is, the lineage blessings are coming. But if your heart is closed, then of course they can't penetrate you. So that's something that Tulku Urgyen, he had a natural presence that inspired devotion. You're just like, it made me think at that time, and since then I've refined this thought to be really true, that there are some beings that are so great that the only way you can interact with them is by prostrating. You want to put your head on the floor. I had never done that before I went to Asia. And I don't do that much in the Zen tradition. And I hadn't even hardly done it in Taiwan. But with Tulku Urgyen, you feel like that's the most appropriate gesture you can make. And it's this kind of thing that helps us to develop devotion. That's why this kind of talk is so good. And you should invite people who really know, not ordinary beings like me, but people like Andreas, and let them share about the inner experience of being with Tulku Urgyen. I was just one of many students. I did receive an empowerment. I did my best at it and still am. But some people were very, very close, and really heard all those stories in person and stuff. And that's very beautiful. Something I do remember. Let me tell a few more things. How late are we going? What's the deal here?
You have another 10, 15 minutes.
All right. You just signal me. I don't have anything to say other than this. I did spend a lot of time. I've spent quite a bit of time in Kham. So if you want to hear about those stories, like I went to one of the caves that's associated with the Taratama stuff, and I went to the place where Barche Kunso was revealed. So anyway, if you want to hear about that, you just have to invite me back. I like shooting my mouth off, so I'm happy to talk. But I won't have time to talk about that today or show any pictures. But I want to say this. Whenever Tulku Urgyen would teach, he would always say, in this very intimate way, I remember seeing him leaning forward and saying, people like us, blah, blah, blah. And I remember the first time I heard him say that, I was like, people like us. And I was kind of looking around the room like, who's he talking about? There's clearly no one like him here. But that's not how he saw it. He thought that we were all same. We're all beings on the path. We all want the same thing, which is freedom from suffering. And we're all working together to get it. So that really, that's always stayed with me. People like us. Like, wow. So I say to you, people like us, we can do it. It's in our hands. Something that I thought of the other day. Oftentimes when we think about the lineage, like Graham was talking about how important it is to know about the lineage of the Choling Tersar and how it's handed down and all that stuff, he is so right. And it's really good to read all the books that are out there about these things, and to look at Treasury of Lives, which is a great website that Alexander Gardner put together. And it has histories of all these teachers, all of whom are, the more recent ones are all associated with Choling Tersar and this kind of thing. It's important to recognize all the lineages that, you guys are students of Choknima. Choknima is above your head, but he's above your head. You are the next person in the lineage. It's not like it stops with Choknima Rinpoche. It comes to you. And so that's very inspiring. We should be very enthusiastic about that, because it's coming to us. It's not like we are sort of separate or we're watching the lineage. We are actually part of that lineage. And then blessings are flowing down to us, which has always kept me going. I think it hopefully keeps you guys going. So Urgyen was always talking about things like that. So I tend to talk about them too, and I think about them all the time. He often would say things like, people like us, we really have to keep in mind the fact we're going to die. And he would tell a story, which I heard numerous times, and apparently he told it a lot, about the great Indian master Padampa Sanjay, who was the teacher of the woman who really founded the Chud lineage, Machik Labdran. Many people think he was Machik's main teacher, but he wasn't, according to Fairhearted. But Padampa was a great Siddha who lived in a place called Tingri on the border of Nepal and Tibet. I went one time, freezing in Tingri. And when he was leaving Tibet, someone got him to give some teachings that they wrote down, and that's still around, those teachings. But one of the things that he said that Tulku Urgyen always quoted was, when I see Tibetan people, I feel like laughing, because everyone knows that everyone's going to die, but nobody thinks I'm going to die. When I see Tibetan people, I feel like laughing. I remember Tulku Urgyen telling that story, and the way he would tell stories was so sweet and also mixed with profound, and you felt so lucky to be there, that I remember sitting in that little room and laughing because the story's kind of funny, but also sort of having tears rolling down my face because you feel so much devotion and this kind of like coming together of this. That was special times. Special times. Let's aspire together again right now. I'm not kidding. We got to do it together. They would become just like that. you want accomplishment in your life, you have to make aspirations. Aspirations are like shooting arrows into the future. You can't control the future. You can barely control the present, right? America cannot even control its president. It's totally out of insane. But aspirations do tend to ripen. So I want to encourage you guys, make aspirations all the time. Not only aspirations like, may I become like Tulku Urgyen, which does seem a little bit outrageous, but also aspirations to meet all the teachers that you ever link with. Your Serap Leki Lamas, as they say in Tibetan. Serap Leki Lama is like your Lama for many lifetimes. And these are the Lamas that their words penetrate the deepest. So it's very important to make as many aspirations as you can. I want to get that across. And when Tulku Urgyen, he would mix together the view with the reason to practice, which, of course, the reason to practice is to get free and all that stuff, but he was very into emphasizing that time is short. We don't know when we're going to die. He would say things that at the time seemed so funny, but now they seem more poignant since some people in my life are currently dying. I'm in my early 50s, so it's starting to happen. And he would say, you're walking somewhere, you just fall down, you're dead. You're eating something, and you just slump over in your chair, you're dead. This happens every day. And I remember him looking right at me saying, have you ever heard about someone who never died? I was like, oh. So we really should think about this. Time is short. There's only one thing to do. Recognize your nature, give rise to incredible devotion, and recognize your nature again, and let those play off each other. Because as Nosha Wungtok told Kempa, it's only through faith and devotion. We think, being Westerners, we all go to college and we learn all these things when we're very young about math and stuff. We think it's all about techniques. It's not about techniques. There are techniques, and you should learn them. And you should, Tulku Urgyen said specifically to me directly, you have to know three things to be a Dzogchen practitioner. You have to know how to practice Trekcho, cutting through, the meditation. You have to know the practice of Togal, which is the visionary practice. And you have to have a sadhana. Those three things are necessary. So I pass that on for you guys, which you already know, because I'm sure Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche talks about all this stuff all the time. But if you only need to know three things, we can do it. But the real key to making those things work, all devotion, all love. Love and devotion for the guru. You feel love and devotion for the guru upwards. You feel compassion and love for the people below you. And, that's for the beings who are suffering, which is, of course, I could probably go on forever. When you think about devotion, you think when the students have devotion, it makes the guru shine more brightly. And as the guru shines more brightly, then your devotion is naturally increased. And your increase in devotion causes the guru to shine more brightly. And it works like that. It's very important for the guru also that the students have devotion. If you're just sitting there when you're receiving the teaching, like, impress me, that doesn't work as well. So we really have to work hard to develop a sense of gratitude and devotion toward these lineage lamas. It helps them live longer. It helps the teachings come out more solidly. And also they reach more people because like turning up the voltage in the wattage in a light bulb, it gets brighter. And the brighter it is, the more people can see it. And we want that. We want the Dharma spread throughout the world, and we want ourselves to accomplish it. And we can do it. I know it's possible. The people you heard Graham. Graham is like an accomplished dude. Michael Tweed, these guys are my teachers. We got to take them to heart. So I want to say one other thing, and then I'll stop. Tulku Urgyen also talks a lot about renunciation. And on this path, we hear a lot about renunciation. Renunciation sounds like hating samsara. They say you should observe samsaric experience like it's a pool of vomit, right? I mean, you're not very interested in wiping up the vomit. So this kind of attitude, it's very Tibetan, and it does work. If you feel connected with it, then you should, use that. There's another way to look at renunciation, and I think that it's valuable for us. At least it's been valuable for me. And that is that renunciation is less about disliking samsara, the unreliability and crappiness of samsara, it's more about falling in love with the nature of mind, with the Deshik Ningpo, Tulku Urgyen always called it. It's very important, just as Tulku Urgyen always said, and he says in that book, you've got to find a Lama who can point out the nature of mind to you. So if you haven't done that, make that your main goal and make aspirations every day that you can meet the Lama who can show this to you and you can feel confident and you can train in it. If you already know, then you already know. That's excellent. Try to fall in love with it. Falling in love with the nature of mind is to automatically let go of attachment and connection to the negative kind of connection to samsaric experience. And that is really what's necessary in the path. We can't have it both ways. The Urgyen said that over and over, even to me. He said, you have to abandon samsara at some point. It's easier to abandon if you have something to love. We're loving beings, right? So turn toward your nature and let that thing, that essence, that truth shine out and allow yourself to fall in love with it. And reading the books like Blaze of Splendor, and there's so many amazing books, that only helps, right? You feel greater devotion. Of course, the path opens up more and the lamas shine more brightly. That makes you have more devotion, and it just works like that. And next thing you know, you'll be just like the Lord. At least that, I hope. As soon as that happens, call me because I want to receive teaching from you. I can't wait. So I think that's all I got. Thanks for letting me shoot off my mouth. It's a pleasure to be able to talk about these things. My life, I never recovered from that. Never recovered. I'm the same as I was my whole life. I have a business and we sell Tibetan medicine. I didn't know anything about Tibetan medicine. So we do that. And I got this group and my house is full of Dharma stuff. It's like, it's a lifestyle. You got to allow it to take over. If you allow it to take over, then you will be freed. If you don't allow it to take over, we can't say. So with that, and with this fine statue that Tulku Urgyen himself touched, I pass on my great wishes. Thank you very much. That's the main part. But before we quit, let's dedicate the merit. Just in your own minds, in your own hearts, think, whatever merit I've generated by hearing these stories and however much devotion I've developed as a result of this talk, may all beings benefit from it. It's spread to everyone. Think like that. Those are the three excellences. And that's a real teaching of Tulku Urgyen. So anyway, with that, thank you very much for letting me talk. I hope it was helpful or beneficial, or at least you enjoyed it. And we'll see each other again, maybe.